Is the ice cream in your freezer even ice cream anymore? Some of Australia's most trusted brands have quietly changed what's inside. The labels tell a very different story. Here's where it starts. Let's begin with a brand many Australians grew up with. Peter's. Drumsticks, classic vanilla tubs, party packs. These products still look familiar. The branding hasn't changed much. The freezers still place them next to ice cream, but the label tells a different story. Many of these products are no longer sold as ice cream at all. They're sold as ice confections. That distinction matters. An ice confection isn't required to meet the same dairy standards as ice cream. It can contain far less milk fat. It can rely heavily on water, sugars, stabilisers, and vegetable oils to create texture. If you look closely at the ingredients on popular drumstick-style products, the first ingredient is often water. Not cream, not milk, water. You'll also see wording like vegetable oil and / or cream. That means cream is no longer the guaranteed fat source. It's optional. This explains something that comes up repeatedly in Australian consumer reviews. The texture is often described as slippery. The melt feels unusual, and the flavour tends to coat the mouth instead of dissolving. That isn't nostalgia playing tricks on you, that's formulation. When water and oil replace dairy fat, manufacturers rely on emulsifiers and stabilisers to hold everything together. The result is a product that looks like ice cream, but behaves very differently once it hits your mouth. Nothing here breaks the rules. The label does exactly what the law requires. But most shoppers never read it closely enough to realise they're buying something entirely different from what they remember. That's why this brand starts our list. What makes this harder to notice is that these changes rarely happen all at once. They happen quietly. Dairy fat is one of the most expensive ingredients in frozen food. It fluctuates with milk supply, energy costs, and transport. Water, vegetable oils, and stabilisers don't. As brands scale up, shelf life and consistency start to matter more than richness. Products need to survive long transport, months in freezers, and temperature changes without collapsing. The law allows that shift, as long as the product is named correctly. So the name on the box stays familiar. The category on the label changes. You'll see this pattern again and again as we move through the list. Viennetta is one of the most striking examples of how far marketing can drift from reality. This product still looks elegant. It's still associated with dinner parties and celebrations. The name hasn't changed. The box still suggests indulgence. But it's no longer ice cream. It's clearly labelled as an ice confection. That means it doesn't meet the legal definition of ice cream in Australia. And when you look at the ingredients, it becomes obvious why. Vegetable oil appears prominently, not as a trace ingredient, but as a core structural component. That's why online product reviews describe the same experience again and again. It didn't melt. It tasted waxy. It felt like frozen air. Some reviews even mention that when left outside, it barely changes shape. Real ice cream softens, then collapses. It loses structure quickly because dairy fat melts at a relatively low temperature. Ice confections are engineered to resist that. Vegetable oils and stabilisers hold their shape longer, even outside the freezer. That's great for transport and presentation, but it changes how the product behaves once you eat it. Instead of disappearing cleanly, it lingers. Instead of pooling, it holds form. Instead of cooling and clearing, it coats. Once you've noticed that difference, it becomes impossible to ignore, and it's often the fastest way to tell whether you're dealing with ice cream or something designed to imitate it. This product hasn't just changed slightly, it has crossed into a different category altogether, while keeping the same name and visual identity people trust. If you haven't checked the label, you would never know. That's exactly why it belongs on this list. Now let's talk about supermarket home brands. These are often defended with one argument. They're cheap, you get what you pay for. That's true, but the problem isn't the price. The problem is what people think they're buying. Take the large 2-litre vanilla tub sold under supermarket home brands. When you read the ingredients, the first ingredient is water. Not milk, not cream. Water. These products are often classified as reduced fat ice cream or frozen dessert. Some contain as little as 6% milk fat. To put that into perspective, Australian food standards require a minimum of 10% milk fat for a product to be sold as ice cream. Reduced fat products are allowed to go lower, but that doesn't change the eating experience. When water is the base, manufacturers rely heavily on sugar, thickeners, and air to build volume and texture. That's why these tubs feel extremely light for their size. Food manufacturing practices explain this clearly. A significant portion of what you're buying is whipped air. Again, this is not illegal, it's not hidden, but the front of the tub still says vanilla, still uses ice cream imagery, and still sits next to real ice cream in the freezer. If you buy this expecting a traditional dairy product, you're going to be disappointed. This is where the idea of value gets tricky. Most people compare ice cream by tub size, not weight, but air counts as volume. The lighter the product, the bigger the tub can look for the same cost. That's why these containers feel almost weightless when you pick them up. When dairy fat is reduced, manufacturers compensate with air, sugar, and stabilisers. The product still fills the tub, but far less of it is actual dairy. So while the price looks appealing, the eating experience doesn't match what people expect when they hear the word ice cream. This isn't about judging budget choices, it's about understanding what's being traded away. If you want real dairy richness, weight matters. Density matters, and labels matter more than the size printed on the front. This one hurts for a lot of Australians. Blue Ribbon was a family staple for decades. Birthday parties, school holidays, late night desserts. It was dependable, but it has changed. If you look closely at the current packaging, you'll see something important. Many products in this range are now labelled as vanilla-flavoured frozen dairy dessert, not ice cream. That single line explains what many consumers have been reporting. The milk fat content has dropped below what's required to call it ice cream, and something had to replace that missing fat. That replacement is vegetable oil. Across Australian consumer review platforms, shoppers repeatedly describe the same sensations. A greasy mouthfeel, a lingering coating on the lips, a taste that feels artificial and thin at the same time. Some reviews describe it as foamy, others compare it to frozen margarine. The explanation on pack is usually phrased in gentle terms. Smoother texture, improved consistency, but smoother also means cheaper to produce. Dairy fat is expensive, vegetable oil is not. Nothing disappeared. Nothing was rebranded. The formula changed quietly, with the expectation that most people wouldn't notice. A lot of people noticed. Brands like this rely heavily on memory. When something has been part of family routines for decades, trust carries forward automatically. People don't recheck labels. They don't question the category. They reach for what feels familiar. That's what makes quiet reformulation so effective. The packaging stays the same. The name stays the same. The expectation stays the same, only the product shifts underneath. And because the change is gradual, it often takes a moment of disappointment for people to realise something is different. By then, the habit has already been broken. Streets has been part of Australian food culture for over a century, but ownership matters and so do production priorities. Golden Gaytime and Paddle Pop are no longer built around dairy first. Their ingredient lists include reconstituted milk, vegetable oils, glucose syrups, emulsifiers, and stabilisers. These products are designed for mass production, long shelf life, and consistent texture across huge volumes. That consistency comes at a cost. Consumer reviews frequently mention that the flavour feels watered down compared to years ago. Others report discomfort they didn't experience in the past, often assuming lactose was the cause, until they noticed it only happened with specific products. This isn't about accusing anyone of wrongdoing. It's about recognising that these are no longer simple dairy treats. They are highly engineered frozen products. If you're buying them expecting the taste you remember from childhood, you're buying on memory, not reality. Magnum markets itself as premium, Belgian chocolate, indulgence, luxury. But when you strip away the marketing and read the ingredient list, the story changes. Many Magnum products are labelled as frozen dairy desserts, not ice cream. The base often includes reconstituted skim milk, vegetable oil, glucose syrup, and multiple stabilisers. Even the emulsifiers used in the chocolate coating are often derived from palm oil. This helps explain why consumer reviews frequently describe Magnum as rich on the outside, but oddly hollow on the inside. The coating dominates. The centre lacks density. The melt doesn't behave like real cream-based ice cream. You're paying a premium price, but much of that price goes toward branding, coating, and portion control. Magnum isn't selling traditional ice cream. It's selling an indulgent frozen dessert experience built for scale and shelf stability. That's not what most people think they're buying. This is where things get controversial. Connoisseur divides consumer opinion more than almost any other product in this category. To be fair, it does contain more cream than many mass-market options. But here's the issue. It positions itself as premium and charges premium prices. Yet across multiple flavours, skim milk concentrate appears before cream. Cream content varies significantly by flavour. And long-time shoppers have documented noticeable recipe changes over time. Many report that the texture has become lighter, the tubs feel less dense. The flavour doesn't linger the way it used to. Some flavours include vegetable oil. Others rely heavily on gums and emulsifiers to compensate for reduced dairy fat. This creates confusion. Part of that confusion comes from how premium is defined today. In many cases, premium no longer means fewer ingredients. It means stronger flavours, smoother textures, and visual indulgence. Those qualities are often achieved through formulation tweaks rather than simply using more cream. At the same time, tub sizes shrink, prices rise, and expectations stay high. So even when a product still looks good on paper, the eating experience can feel thinner than it used to. Not because the product collapsed, but because the definition of premium quietly shifted. That's why reactions here are so divided. Numbers don't always translate to satisfaction. This is why Connoisseur appears on the list, not because it's the worst option in the freezer, but because it no longer delivers what its price and branding promise. Premium isn't just a number on a label, it's density, mouthfeel, ingredient simplicity. That's what many shoppers say they've lost. The number one problem isn't one brand, it's what happens when big brands quietly switch categories. Frozen dairy desserts, ice confections, reduced fat, ice cream. That's why you'll see familiar names still sitting in the ice cream section, while the label says something else. Same freezer, same branding, different product. These products are everywhere. They sit next to ice cream. They use the same imagery. They rely on the fact that most shoppers don't know the legal definitions. Manufacturers follow the law, but they don't highlight the downgrade. They minimise it. Australian food standards are clear about naming. If a product doesn't meet the definition of ice cream, it must be called something else. What the rules don't require is emphasis. There's no obligation to explain the difference on the front of the pack. No warning label, no comparison chart, so responsibility quietly shifts to the shopper. Once you understand the categories, the system makes sense. But without that knowledge, most people assume everything in the freezer is roughly the same. It isn't. Once you know this, you start seeing it everywhere. The word dessert instead of ice cream. Water listed first. Vegetable oil replacing cream. Long ingredient lists doing the work dairy used to do. This isn't about fear, it's about awareness. Now let's talk about what to buy instead. If you want a product that still behaves like real ice cream, Häagen-Dazs vanilla stands out. The ingredient list is short. Cream is listed clearly and in high proportion. There's no need to hide behind thickeners to create texture. When it melts like dairy. When you eat it, it tastes dense and rich without feeling greasy. It's expensive, it's imported, but it's honest. You know exactly what you're buying. Golden North is one of the few large-scale Australian brands that has maintained a simpler approach. They publicly committed to removing palm oil years ago. They use fresh milk and cream from local dairy suppliers. And the eating experience reflects that. Is it perfect? No. But it tastes like ice cream. It melts like ice cream. And the ingredient list aligns with what people expect when they buy a dairy product. That consistency is why it continues to receive positive feedback from shoppers who have made the switch. Here's the bottom line. The ice cream industry hasn't collapsed overnight. It's been slowly reformulated, quietly downgraded and carefully rebranded. The packaging stayed familiar. The names stayed the same. Only the fine print changed. Everything in this video is based on publicly available product labels, Australian food standards and verified consumer reviews. All sources are linked in the description if you want to check them yourself. If this video did one thing, it showed you where to look. Next time you're standing in the freezer aisle, 3 things matter more than the branding. What the product is legally called, what ingredient appears first, and whether the fat comes from cream or oil. Those 3 details tell you almost everything about what you're buying. And if you care about making smarter choices like this, about food, products, and what's really behind the labels, consider subscribing. This channel exists to break down the fine print most people never see. You don't need to memorize ingredients or chase perfection. You just need to know where the shortcuts usually hide, because once you start reading labels, you can't unsee them. If this helped you, share it with someone who still thinks all ice cream is the same. And if you've noticed a brand change that isn't on this list, say it in the comments. Your freezer deserves better than frozen disappointment. I'll see you in the next one.